What's up everyone, welcome back to Tabletop Forge. This is definitely the largest 3D print I've ever worked with, but like with all 3D prints, I need to start with some post-processing. I need to clean off the mold lines, remove print artifacts and burrs and the leftovers from supports. I need to get that all done, so let's get to work. This is another file from Loot Studios. It's the Silent Coin Tavern and Inn. This whole thing was printed by a friend on his FDM 3D printer. I currently only own a resin 3D printer, but the more I work on pieces like this, the more I feel the need to get my own FDM printer. If anyone has any recommendations for a good entry-level printer, let me know in the comments. Once things are cleaned up, it's time to glue this beast together. I'm using some high-flow super glue and some super glue accelerant. Some edges of this print are really slick, so I'm going to sand them down before gluing. Super glue always works best on rough surfaces. This combination of superglue and accelerant works great to seal these pieces together, but there's very little working time, so I recommend really making sure to test fit the pieces carefully before you apply the glue. Once things are glued, I want to fill the gaps with spackling or filler and use some sculpting tools, my finger, and a wet paintbrush to blend things together. Hey viewers, I would like to remind you that I make these videos to show off my art and to inspire others. I'm not sponsored, I don't make any money doing this, I actually teach math for a living, and all of this is fine, but there are some things I would like to get, like a new 3D printer, a static grass applicator, and of course I'm always buying paints and flock and all that stuff. If you appreciate what I do, you can always support me by just watching my videos, leaving comments, and liking and subscribing, all that good stuff. But I also have Amazon affiliate links where you can buy things that I use in my videos, and it doesn't cost you any extra, but if you use my link, I get a small cut from it. I also have a PayPal that you can just donate money to if you want. I really appreciate you all watching, and I appreciate any support you feel like giving. Anyways, here's a pretty gnarly piece of 3D printed gunk left behind that I need to clean out. For some reason, this reminds me of those videos of people popping pimples. It's very satisfying to finally get this out of there. I used a ton of spray paint primer on this piece. I always use black first to prime and set a base for all the shadows, and then I go back over with some white for a highlight and a base for the colors. It sometimes can seem a little bit redundant, but honestly, this is how I get the best results in the final product. I'm going to try to use the airbrush as much as I can to save me some time, so I want to cover all of the wood with some burnt umber ink. The Liquitex stuff is great, but it's very expensive, so I'm trying out this other brand, and I'm also going to cut it with some burnt umber paint to try and make it last a little bit longer. One of the challenges with painting some of these interiors are how narrow and difficult they are to get to. It's bad enough with the airbrush, but I'm sure I'll be complaining again later when I have to do it with the paintbrush. I also have some gray ink I'm trying out on the bricks to save me some painting time. It's pretty light and subtle, but it serves as a decent base coat, and I'll go back over it from there later. For the shingles on the roof, I'm using a spiced berry color, but I had to thin it out to run it through the airbrush, and it came out a little bit too pink. Later I'm going to have to go over it with a brush to add a little bit of red and darken it up. Here I just wanted to give you all an idea of how massive and multi-tiered this piece is. It's honestly pretty epic, but there's also a lot more work to do, so keep watching. Here I'm darkening up the shingles, adding a little bit more of that spice berry and red color. Then I'm adding some brass coloring to the cupola, I think it's called, and the other bits of metal on the roof. I'm using this golden sunset color to serve for the paint and plaster for most of the interior and exterior of the build. You'll notice this paint job can get pretty sloppy in spots, mostly because of the tight angles required to reach these spots. Later I go back through with some more burnt umber to clean up several mistakes. Honestly, painting these interiors was pretty rough, and I really had to just power through it. For the first two floors in the tavern area, I used this green color for the walls to make it a bit more special looking. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know how I like my khaki dry brush. It's pretty subtle here, but it does a great job of highlighting and adding some age. Here are some of those corrections I mentioned earlier. Some of the basement and ground level stone I wanted to darken up, so I added some watered down charcoal colored paint. Here I have some of my homemade wash using black, brown, and green paint mixed with lots of water and a little bit of dish soap. I cover pretty much everything with it. At some point I also threw some blue paint on the walls in the basement. I later toned it down with some wash and some dry brushing. These doors would have looked nicer if I printed them on my resin printer, but I already had them printed for me, so I just went with it. I'm just hitting all the metal parts with some black to simulate some wrought iron. There are a lot of blank picture frames in the interior, and I wanted to spice things up a bit by adding some paintings. I did a sort of rubbing over each picture. I cut out a template, and then I had a friend print a bunch of classic paintings on a color printer so I could cut them out and glue them in. With more time and planning, you could do some really cool things with this, maybe having customized portraits of like your characters or whatever you wanted in there. But with limited resources, mainly time, I thought this would bring some life to the interior in a pretty cool way. After cutting a picture out, slapping some glue on the back, I pressed it into the frame. I didn't really know what to do with this sign other than add some metallic paints. Again, with some planning, you could probably really customize this for your specific setting and location. I don't know why, but this piece of meat that's supposed to go over the fire in the kitchen turned out really well, I think. These bits were printed on my resin printer, by the way. You can probably tell in the change in quality. Lastly, I wanted to spice up this build by adding some proper ground cover to the exterior, starting with some coconut fiber. As I've done with previous builds, I start by mashing it between the bricks with my fingers, and then I use a brush to wipe away the excess. I also added some to the sides of the staircase and around the stones in the entrance and in the basement. I didn't want to go overboard here, trying to stick to the idea that less is more. Once it's all in place, I spray some watered down white glue to seal it all in. I cut some wire to length and pinned all of the doors into place, including the cool secret door behind the bookcase. I mixed some flocking with some white glue and I brushed it onto the bricks to simulate some moss. This looks really weird and white at first, but when it dries, it looks much better. I sprinkled on some grass flock, and I really like how it brings some color and life to this ground. Then I spray it with some watered down isopropyl alcohol, and finally drizzle on some watered down glue to seal it all in. In my final step, I'm going to add some grass tufts. I like to dry fit them first and then add a dab of tacky glue to the bottom and place them in with some tweezers. Alright, this build is about done. It's time to check out the final result. Phew, that was a lot of work. I really hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you happen to own this file and been putting it off, I hope it inspired you to finally tackle it. In the description I have Amazon affiliate links for things like coconut fiber, inks, super glue accelerants, all kinds of stuff if you want to pick some up. I also have a PayPal account if you want to help me invest in an FDM printer of my own and support my work in general. I really appreciate you all watching, and I appreciate any feedback in the comments. I'll catch you all next time on Tabletop Forge.